Hi, this is Starkie Sowers. Welcome again to another Plus Program training series. Today's topic, winter health or cold and flu, and this is part 2. So we discussed a little bit on part 1 about the cold and flu season, and typically that runs from late autumn, so to speak, or fall throughout the winter time. And one of the things that we know for sure is when it comes to colds, roughly about 200 different types of viruses can create a cold situation. Flus typically are going to be influenza, and there's different types of strains of influenza. But ultimately, cold and flu together, one of the things that we remember is sometimes the symptoms are similar, but a real quick note was colds, typically you can work through them. They're not so daunting, so to speak, on the system, as opposed to a flu, which definitely has a tendency to debilitate you with weakness, muscle weakness, as well as fever symptoms. Cold and flu, typically more upper respiratory type symptoms. Your body's a little bit more capable of working through that. All right, so one of the things I wanted to do in this particular series was actually bring to you some products that we have in the store that are typically used for cold and flu symptoms, as well as the severity of the symptoms as well too. So what I did is I sectioned them out a little bit. Looking at the chart here, we see a couple different things. Number one, I listed homeopathic ingredients, and homeopathic ingredients or homeopathic remedies typically are actually homeopathic medicines. And so when we think of homeopathic medicines, they actually have an NDC or a number right at the top, and that's a National Drug Compliantary number. And what it does is indicate that it's actually a registered over-the-counter drug. So remember that when you're thinking of homeopathy, they're actually drugs, they're over-the-counter drugs. And one thing to remember about them as well is too, they're very descriptive, and they're also symptom-based. So a lot of times you'll see it reduces the severity of this or helps improve with allergies. And so that's what's nice about a homeopathic ingredient is it'll give you a lot of description of what it's for. All right, the next on the list would be traditional herbs. And one thing about traditional herbs is we're going to get into that and kind of look at that. Traditional herbs, typically, there's a lot of different types of herbs, and we're just going to cover some of the popular herbs and maybe talk about some of the research that makes it a little bit more than just a traditional herb use. And then finally, we're going to also look at maybe just some other different types of supplements and some new things that are out there, just to kind of round out our three-way approach, so to speak, to deal with cold and flus. All right, so let's look at homeopathic remedies or homeopathic medicines, as they like to be called by the manufacturers. On the top of the list is oscillococcinum, and it's a little bit difficult to talk about, but oscillococcinum is probably the number one flu remedy over the counter that's available in the United States. And so when I say the number one flu remedy, alternative flu remedy. And so definitely propagated out into just about every avenue. You see it all over the place. You'll see it in different types of major stores and drugstores, but it definitely started in the health food business, probably in the late 80s, early 90s. So what's nice about this, it's a very interesting preparation. First of all, it's a preparation of duck liver and duck heart. And what it does is actually carries a lot of the flu virus components, so to speak, with it. So what you'll notice, though, when you look at oscillococcinum, what it says is it reduces the severity and the symptoms and the duration of cold and flu. It doesn't say that it will eliminate the cold and flu. It eliminates the symptoms and the duration. So that's different, very, very different to remember. It's not attacking the virus or preventing the virus from replicating or anything of that nature. It's just dealing with the symptoms. All right. So what's unique about this is they did a study with about 487 individuals, and they found out that oscillococcinum indeed was highly effective. All right. So the Boron Company also makes a couple other different types of products. Chestol being one of my favorite ones, especially a lot of times with cold and flu, you'll end up with respiratory infections or maybe some type of chest congestion. So a couple ingredients that are in Chestol. Number one, antimonium tarticum, which is great for green, thick mucus buildup in the lungs. Excellent for helping to relieve the symptoms. The other thing it's got is Stictia, which is very effective in alleviating the nighttime cough. Kind of gives you an idea, but there's also about 7 other different types of ingredients that are in there. So reading the label down the panel kind of give you a little bit of information. You might want to take that up and read it. They also have a product called Cold Calm, which is more for just the symptoms of like a head cold. That kind of give you a little bit of an illustration. All right, so with that said, very, very popular formulas in that situation. And so looking at some other different types of formulas, when it comes to homeopathic ingredients, one of my favorite ones that I like to use is one for nasal congestion. So Reboost is the name of the particular product. You can use a tablet. You can also use a spray. And so when we look at the Reboost, it has a couple of things. First of all, it has pulsatilla. It also has eupatorium in it. And eupatorium is a cactus. And when it blossoms a flower, that particular flower has a tendency to create allergies all over the place. And so when using that, what it does is it reduces the symptoms of allergies. So a great product to use. The other thing to remember too is Highlands Homeopathic company has a large amount of children's type of remedies for colds and flus as well. All right, so moving on to the next subject, what we're going to see is traditional use herbs. And probably the number one herb that everyone thinks about is echinacea. And so echinacea, of course, there's all different types of echinacea extracts that are available. One thing that's unique about echinacea, some companies have taken it to the extent of doing some research. So we look at it as Baristox, which is by the enzymatic therapy company. They've actually done a 6-week study with their particular product, a double-blind study, and it showed it reduced the symptoms and severities of it. So a lot of times you'll see a traditional use echinacea and there won't be any claims on it. Doesn't mean that it's not good for the symptoms, but they've never done any research, so they're not able to make those claims. So kind of give you a little bit of difference on that. All right, so next on the list is Umpca. So Umpca is Peladornium, and Peladornium comes from South Africa. So what's unique about Umpca is it actually is a homeopathically prepared product. And what it does is it's been clinically proven to reduce the symptoms of colds and flu. And oftentimes they'll mix other different types of ingredients, homeopathic ingredients with it. And they've got a whole family, so to speak, of Umpca products that are out there. All right, so next on the list definitely would be ginger and garlic. Garlic for years has been used for cold and flu symptoms. One thing we know about garlic is it not only helps to reduce the symptoms, it's basically a very strong folklore. A couple of different companies have done some research on it, particularly Kyolic company here in California, done some research with flu and actually shown that it reduced the symptoms of that. And ginger typically used for different types of stomach ailments, as well as mucus buildup and things of that nature. And that kind of gives you a real good clue on maybe some of the popular ones. Well, what a lot of people say is, well, why don't you just put it all in one? And that's what I call the shotgun formula. System Well by Nature's Way, Wellness Formula by a couple other different companies also will maybe have all these things together, and plus a bunch of other traditionally used herbs. And then, of course, the last one being oregano oil. And when you look at oregano oil, it's definitely got a lot of popularity. Not a lot of research topically, some for antibacterial, antimicrobial, definitely some strong indicators in that particular realm. But ultimately, not a lot of strong research at this point. All right, so moving on to the last portion, we see a lot of new up-and-coming type of nutrients. MRM came out with a bunch of different types of products, and one of my favorite one is what they call immune sport. A lot of individuals, when they exercise too much, have a tendency to maybe actually get sick more often. So this formula not only has the typical vitamin A, vitamin C, some B complex, vitamin D to help the immune system, but also some amino acids to help the body to respond and not get sick as quick. So that being one of my favorite new ones that's on the market. The other one by Twin Lab, they have an immune enhancer formula that has beta glucans. And so the beta glucans are actually a brewer's yeast derived substance, and they actually stimulate the immune system. Great to use right at the onset of different types of sickness, but it's also kind of a tonic that you can use throughout the year, and it kind of helps to balance the immune system if you just have a generally weak immune system. And finally, last on the list, when we look at just maybe some of the symptoms of like sinus and cough and bronchial and things of that nature, Dr. Michael Murray, along with Natural Factors, has a great product that kind of helps alleviate those symptoms. So all that together maybe just gives you a little bit of ammo to go into the cold and flu season, have some things to work with, and help to lessen the blow, so to speak, that it might have with you and your family. This is Starkie Sowers, thanking you for watching another Plus Program training series.